Green Hoodie College Creeper, let's not meet again. I am an 18-year-old girl who only stands about 5'3" and weighs 125 pounds. This experience happened last night, and I was up all night terrified replaying it through my head. I am a freshman at a university I will not name for the sake of privacy, but it is a small college at the edge of a not-so-great washed-up town. My hometown is an hour and a half away, so I chose to live on campus in the apartments my university owns. When scheduling my classes for the first semester, I chose mostly later classes, as I was basically just embracing the fact that I could make my classes cater to me, not waking up any earlier than I would like. So my latest class is a statistics class that ends at 7:45 p.m. My prof was a student teacher, and was honestly clueless and also legally blind, so he can never see the clock to know when class was over, when about 7 minutes over. And while most students left, I have a thing of not wanting to hurt people's feelings, and I stayed until he finished, so I end up being the last one out of the classroom, and I walked out the front doors of the building. I had headphones in, and it was of course dark at the time. At my university, we have an app that is for public safety. It is a great app. You can submit suspicious tips anonymously, request an escort to your car and dorm or wherever else, or set a timer for when you should be arriving at your location. And if you don't punch in your code by that time, the campus police are immediately dispatched to your location. I never really use this because I'm usually with a clump of people exiting the building all at the same time, but for some reason tonight, I felt like maybe I should turn it on. I ignored that feeling. Don't ask why, I don't know, and I kept walking. I noticed somebody in a green jacket with their hood up, walking on the sidewalk that runs straight through the small campus and cluster of buildings towards the parking lot. I only noticed him because he was walking right under a streetlight at the time. I ignored that. It didn't mean anything to me after all, and just kept walking. I remember specifically seeing him walk into the parking lot, and that was it. I crossed the street and was walking along the first row of apartments, and as I was walking in front of the building that usually cut in between to get to the next parking lot over, the same guy in a green jacket with his hood up was walking in front of me, coming from crossing the streets. He stared at me for a few seconds, and when I noticed him, slowly raised his arm and did almost like a mechanical wave to me. I didn't know why he would be waving at me like that, but I knew there was no one else around me, and I smiled back and said, "Hi." He then continued on the sidewalk that led between the two buildings that I was continuing on, and when I turned the corner, he had slowed down his walk tremendously. I was walking very fast as I was freezing my ass off and just wanted to get to my apartment. You know how when someone behind you gets your attention and you kind of slow down while you're walking so that they eventually catch up to you? Well, he was doing that, while his head was down and looking to the side a little, to where he could see my feet behind him, I'm assuming. I had of course slowed down my walking as well, but he just kept slowing down more and more. He was then out of in between the two buildings and stopped by the trunk of a car to the right of me. I didn't know what he was doing, but I tried to ignore it. I was trying to avoid the fact that he was staring at me the whole time I was walking, to where he was to get past him, and then he joined my side. He started to walk in sync with me and close to someone else. It would have looked like two people walking with each other, but in reality, I had no idea who this guy was. He stared at me, smiling a little bit and saying nothing. I still had my headphones in, trying to avoid the situation. I hear him say something, and my immediate response was, "Sorry, what did you say?" Instead of answering me, he just stared and smiled. I replied in my head, and I thought he said something along the lines of us heading in the same direction, so I said, "Did you say we're heading in the same direction?" He just stared for about 5 seconds and then said, "Yeah." I just replied, "Yeah, it looks like it," with a nervous laugh. He was clearly making me uncomfortable. He appeared to be no older than me, probably 19 at the most. I had taken one of my headphones out at this point, not knowing if he was going to continue talking. He then says in the creepiest, most monotone, chilling voice, "I'm going to Building J." I said, "Oh, that's nice." I felt as if he was hoping he would compel me to tell him where I'm going, but I didn't. I then pulled out my iPhone, planning to open the safety app and turn it on. But at this point, he was shoulder to shoulder with me, staring at my phone. So I quickly opened my messages and typed, "Call me right now," to my boyfriend, and sent it as fast as I could, hoping he wouldn't see. As he kept getting closer, I guess I was moving off to the left a little, trying to get away without noticing it. We were in front of the laundry building at this point, so in the same chilling voice he says, "Are you going to the laundromat?" This should have been said like a question, but it was a creepy weird statement sounding sentence. I glanced in the building, thinking maybe I would go in there if there was other people, but there was no one in there. I quickly replied, "Oh no." He stares at me with the same creepy smile and says, "Oh, that's good." I didn't say anything back to this, and I was terrified. Something in my stomach just didn't feel right. I only got bad vibes from this guy. Feeling him staring a hole in the side of my face, I started to walk a little faster. As we were in the parking lot just across the street from my building at this point, he keeps up with me and says again, "I'm going to building J. Where are you going?" In the same statement, like instead of like a question, I don't know how to say it. Building J was one of the buildings on the either side of mine, but I wasn't sure which one. I wasn't going to tell him where I was going, so I just stated I was going to the name of the whole apartment complex. Something else I should note, I have not met anyone on campus who calls their apartment building by the letter on the front. Half of the people don't even know their building letter. Everyone refers to their building by the number. He continued to stare at me, smiling, and as he looked like he was getting ready to say something, suddenly a group of people walked into the parking lot from one of the nearby buildings. He stopped in his tracks. I looked back to see what he was doing, and at this point, I didn't trust him, obviously. He was standing there staring at me, and then he said, "Have a nice night," and then just walked in between the cars and was gone. I hurriedly crossed the streets and climbed to the third floor and looked out over the landing into the parking lot. He was nowhere to be found. I was terrified and got into my apartment as quick as I could, nearly in tears. I don't know what that guy was doing, but I do know one, he was walking through campus alone without a book bag at 8 p.m. for no reason. Number 2, he went out of his way into the parking lot and back through the apartments, making a semicircle. Number 3, he didn't even go to the building J. He disappeared and into the parking lot. 4, I'm extremely grateful for the group of people that entered the parking lot, scaring this creeper off. I reported this in the app, and I got a reply about 5 minutes later saying they were searching the area, and later a message saying they never found him, but if I saw anything else to report it. I was up all night scared, knowing he couldn't get into my apartment, but still terrified of the encounter, and I'm dreading going to that class on Wednesday. Guy in green hood, let's not meet again. The little green arrow in the window. I am back on my throwaway account, posting another story. But this is one from my teen years. I was now living with my mother at this time in my life, and she is not like my dad. I won't go into it, but my father taught us through strict discipline, and my mother taught us what happens without said discipline. It's 4:30 in the morning, and I am up taking a shower at the butt crack of dawn, because I have to be up early to take city fare to school, and we had 2 cars. So I'm busy enjoying the long hot shower that takes forever because teenagers don't pay the damn water and heat bills. We have a window in the shower that is frosted for privacy, and I always crack it a little so the bathroom won't steam up when I put on my little bit of makeup. I'm whistling along and soaping up when I notice a tiny little green arrow in my window. I'm like, what the fudge is a little green arrow doing in my window? I stare more intently. I see some numbers and a few green dots, and then it moves slightly. It's a wristwatch. Someone was inches away in the pitch black staring at me taking my shower. I don't scream like a typical girl and act like a blithering fool. I straight up smash my face, spitting mad into the screen of the window, about to bite his fucking nose off. I hear the foyer choke and gasp as he falls from his perch and hit the ground badly. I then hear his frantic escape down the alley. I rinse quick, throw on my bathrobe, grab my practice wooden katana, and hunt barefoot with just a robe on down the alley. Stupid of me, but adrenaline always did that to me. Fast forward a few days later, I had a feeling that he was going to be back. I turned on my shower, cracked the window, and wait outside in all black with my favorite steel bat. Guess who showed up? My friggin' neighbor. A married man with kids. I jump out of the bushes shrieking, and probably slobbering, and he trips and flees around the bend of the alley. 2 days later, I'm in the passenger seat with my mother just barely managing to take me to school. I see him loading his family in their car. I stare deep black rage directly at him and actually knock my window in a mock punch and did the whole "I'm watching you" bit. He looks genuinely frightened and hurries his family in the car and jackrabbits out and down the streets. Mom confronting his wife about being a pedophile voyeur was probably the source of his panic. I don't see him the next month in the apartment across the way. I still don't know how I survived my mother's half-awake, half-intoxicated attempts to drive me to school. Everything else was easy compared to that. The Pastel green truck. I was at my grandma's house playing in the front yard. I was around 7 or 8 years old at the time. The adults and my cousins had all gone in her house, while I stayed outside playing with my cousin's dog, Midnight. Midnight ran over a little closer to the road and I followed her. While I was still petting her, I noticed the pastel green pickup truck start slowing down. Now, I've been told about stranger danger and how they could abduct me and hurt me. I was kind of a paranoid little girl and still am now, so I was watching the truck from the corner of my eye. My thoughts went directly to "I am going to be killed." The truck stopped on the road, and someone in it rolled down the window, so I looked at them. I could see that there were 3 males, all of whom looked kind of scruffy. Out of nowhere, they started shouting and cursing. I was startled, but stood there with a blank look on my face and my hand on Midnight's head. I didn't really understand what they were saying, but I did hear one of them call me a bitch and say, "Yeah, we're talking to you." Then they all laughed. I was shaking, but I kept standing there and staring straight at them with no expression on my face. Stupid, I know. Then they left. I could hear them laughing as they sped off. As soon as they were gone, I ran in my grandma's house. I never told any of my family this story. This incident terrified me for the longest time, and it still creeps me out today. The Green Man. Back in the 1950s, my grandfather would work odd jobs to make ends meet. He would often work at night and would commute to work along Pennsylvania Route 351. The car my grandfather had at the time was often unreliable and die at the most inconvenient times. So of course, while traveling along the route, his car died near a collection of houses. My grandfather spotted someone who appeared to be an elderly man that was walking along a sidewalk. So my grandfather got out of the car and approached the man. When he tapped on the man's shoulder, the man turned around, revealing a terrifyingly disfigured face. He seemed to have no eyes and no nose. My horrified grandpa sprinted as fast as he could back to his car and braced himself. Eventually, the disfigured man left, and my grandfather was able to start up his car and go to his work at the time. From this point on, my grandfather would tell the story and say it was a demon of sorts. Curious, I looked into the story and found out that the Green Man wasn't a figment of his imagination. It was a real person, although he wasn't a demon that was out to eat your soul. His appearance was similar to my grandfather's recollection of the event. The Green FourDoor. This totally creepy situation happened to me when I was in 4th grade. My whole life, I've lived in a quiet town in Connecticut, which will explain why my friend and I were so dumb and narrow-minded. Nothing scary or violent ever happens here. My friend and I used to live right down the street from each other, and most days we would go on bike rides after school. On this day, we decided to stop at the park that was right around the corner from my house. This park was just a fairly large and square fenced-in field with a swing set in one corner. We parked our bikes at the entrance of the gate on the sidewalk and were playing on the swings. Apparently that day, as one of my classmates were walking home from the bus, a man attempted to kidnap her, and the school called out a recording to all the parents letting them know what happened with a description of the man in his car. My friend's mother immediately called her to tell us to come home. Even though we were in the 4th grade, My friend's mom had given her a clunky flip phone because her parents had divorced, so she would be able to keep in contact with them. She told her to ride our bikes home and to watch out for the man in a green four-door car. This is the part of the story where people usually hightail it home, but for some reason, we decided to hang out for a few more minutes. At this point, it was apparent that we weren't the brightest kids, so the fact that my friend decided to get into the baby seat swing and have me take a picture of her with her phone was not surprising. While I was taking the picture, my friend's face went completely cold as she looked behind me. A green four-door was driving slowly on the opposite side of the park, and the man inside was staring directly at us. Although we were surrounded by houses, there seemed to be no one outside because it was pretty dark out and cloudy, which made this all the more scary. This is when it started to get really creepy. The man seemed to know that there was only one exit and started driving around to it. We both knew we had to get there before he did, but when I went to run, I noticed my friend was stuck in the swing. After trying to get her out, we both looked over and saw that the man had parked his car right next to the exit, by our bikes. When I finally freed her, we just stood there staring at him. He was waiting for us. My friend grabbed my hand and we ran in the opposite direction and hopped the fence. As we were running down the sidewalk, we realized he was following us and getting closer and closer. I knew that there was no way we could outrun him. So as soon as he got right up next to us, I started screaming. I don't know why I did this, considering I was a really shy kid at the time. The screaming seemed to spook him too, and he drove away. Eventually, we ran home and told my mom what had happened, and she called the police. They never found the man. But ever since then, I've always been nervous going into any place that only has one exit. The part that still freaks me out to this day was that we lived in a residential neighborhood, and the fact that this guy did not care and came right up to us showed us he would have taken us both. Pedo in a green car. Back when I was a young 14-year-old girl, I used to walk by myself around the city that I lived in. Since my destinations were fairly close, no one thought about it twice. One day, as I was walking home from my friend's house, I entered a residential street that was a shortcut. Partway down the street, I passed a green car that was sitting across, diagonally, from some boys playing basketball. I have absolutely no idea why I happened to look down and to my side, which put the driver's side in my view, but I did. Unfortunately for me, the driver's side window was down, and I saw a fat Hispanic man with his dick out for all to see and stroking away. For a minute I froze, and our eyes met. I noticed that he had a huge shit-eating grin on his face, and he made no attempt to cover himself or stop once he noticed that I saw what he was doing. Well, after being thoroughly freaked out, I decided to get the hell out of there and started to walk again. And to my horror, I hear the sound of the car behind me start. I took off like a bat out of hell and ran down the street and turned a corner hauling ass to the first random house I saw. Once I realized at the moment I wasn't being followed, I quickly got myself home and eventually I called the cops and reported exactly what had happened, exactly what had transpired. Unfortunately, they never got back to me. And in the end, even till today, I do not know if they ever found the guy.